What happens when a beloved Hollywood star walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a friendly conversation and suddenly finds herself in the middle of a tense debate nobody saw coming? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The applause was loud as Sandra walked onto the set, smiling and waving to the audience before taking her seat at the table. The energy felt warm at first, easy even. A few laughs came quickly as the hosts welcomed her, joking about how audiences always seem to love her no matter what role she takes on. "Well, that's because people think I'm nicer than I actually am," Sandra joked, laughing softly as the audience reacted with an easy laugh of their own. "Oh, come on," one host said with a grin. "You've got one of those faces where everybody assumes you'd help them carry groceries." Sandra laughed again. "Depends how many bags." The crowd laughed harder, the atmosphere light and familiar. The conversation stayed casual for the first few minutes. They talked about balancing privacy with fame, working in Hollywood for decades, and how strange it feels to have audiences think they know you after seeing interviews for years. Sandra sat comfortably, relaxed, occasionally folding her hands together before leaning forward when she wanted to make a point. She kept the mood playful, teasing herself more than anyone else. "You learn pretty fast," she said, smiling, "that if people recognize you at the grocery store while you're buying cereal in sweatpants, there's no mystery left." Audience laughter filled the studio again. But then the tone shifted, slowly, naturally, the way live television sometimes changes without warning. Sunny leaned slightly forward in her chair. "You've talked before about stepping back from Hollywood at times and protecting your peace," she said carefully. "But some people watching might say celebrities have the luxury to disconnect in ways ordinary people can't." The room quieted just a little. Sandra nodded politely. "That's fair," she answered. "Everybody's life looks easier from the outside." Sunny continued. "But I guess what I'm asking is, do celebrities sometimes misunderstand struggle? Because there are people dealing with real financial pressure, real family pressure, and they hear someone successful say they're overwhelmed and maybe they feel disconnected from that." A few audience members murmured quietly. Sandra paused. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. "Well," she said slowly, "I think struggle is struggle." The audience grew quiet. "And I'd be careful comparing pain," she added gently, "because someone always has it worse than somebody else." Sunny nodded but didn't immediately back off. "Sure, but don't you think there's a difference between pressure and privilege?" The table shifted. One host looked between them with the kind of expression that says, "Okay, now we're getting somewhere." Sandra gave a small smile. "There absolutely is privilege," she said. "I'd never deny that." The audience clapped lightly. But privilege doesn't cancel out being human. A louder reaction came from the audience, some applause, a few people nodding. Sunny crossed her hands lightly on the table. "I hear that," she replied. "But people at home sometimes feel celebrities ask for sympathy while living lives most people can't imagine." Sandra stayed calm. "I understand why people feel that way," she said. "I really do." She paused again, careful with her words. "But here's where I push back a little." The audience suddenly leaned in. "You can be grateful," Sandra continued, "and still struggle. You can be successful and still feel pressure. You can have opportunities and still be overwhelmed." A small wave of applause moved through the room. Sunny tilted her head. "But does Hollywood sometimes create a bubble?" Sandra laughed softly. "Oh, absolutely." The audience laughed too. "No question," Sandra said. "Hollywood can be ridiculous." That got a louder reaction. You'll hear somebody complain because they had to wake up at 5 in the morning for hair and makeup, and meanwhile somebody else is working 12 hours on their feet. Audience applause. Sunny smiled slightly, but followed quickly. "So then you get why some people lose patience?" "I do," Sandra said immediately. Then she paused. "But I think what bothers me sometimes," the audience quieted again, "is when people decide somebody's feelings don't count because they've had success." A few people clapped. Sunny sat back briefly before leaning in again. "So you think people can be unfair toward celebrities?" Sandra smiled. "No," she said calmly. "I think people are tired." The audience reacted instantly. A mix of applause and soft murmurs spread through the room. Sandra continued. "I think people are stressed, angry, stretched thin, worried about bills, worried about family, worried about what tomorrow looks like." The room felt noticeably quieter now. "And when somebody on television looks polished and successful talking about stress," Sandra added carefully, "it can sound ridiculous." Sunny nodded. "Exactly. But," Sandra said, lifting a finger slightly as audience laughter broke tension for a second. That doesn't mean emotions suddenly stop existing. A few audience members clapped harder. One host jumped in with a smile. Okay, this is getting interesting. Audience laughter followed. Sunny laughed too. I'm not trying to attack you, she said. Sandra smiled immediately. I know. You sure? Yes, Sandra replied, smiling wider. I've survived Hollywood meetings. The audience burst into laughter. Sunny laughed despite herself. Fair enough. But after the laughter faded, Sunny shifted again. Still, she said more seriously now, I think there's frustration when public figures ask for privacy while also benefiting from attention. The room changed again. Subtle. Tighter. Sandra folded her hands together. That's a fair criticism, she admitted. Audience murmurs. But can I ask something back? Sunny nodded. Of course. Sandra tilted slightly toward the table. Why do we treat visibility like consent? The audience suddenly got very quiet. Even the hosts paused. Sandra continued carefully. If somebody becomes known for their work, why does that automatically mean every part of them belongs to public discussion? A small wave of applause began. Sunny looked thoughtful. Well, because fame changes things. It changes access, Sandra replied. The audience reacted louder. But it shouldn't erase boundaries. The applause grew stronger. One host raised her eyebrows slightly. Oh, Sunny nodded slowly. So your argument is, fame shouldn't equal emotional ownership. Sandra smiled softly. Exactly. The audience applauded again. Then Sunny looked back toward her with a half smile. Okay, she said. But you came ready today. Audience laughter erupted. Sandra laughed too. No, she said playfully. I just had coffee. The room exploded into laughter again, but the energy had shifted. The smiles were still there. The humor was still there. But now everyone could feel it. This wasn't just another celebrity interview anymore. The audience laughter lingered for a moment, but as it faded, the mood at the table stayed charged in that familiar daytime talk show way. Still friendly on the surface, yet carrying an edge everyone could feel. One host smiled and shook her head. You know what I love, she said. Sandra somehow says something serious and then immediately sneaks in a joke, so we all calm down. Audience laughter followed. Sandra shrugged playfully. It's survival, she said. Humor keeps me from saying something dramatic. Sunny smiled, but she leaned forward again, clearly not finished. Okay, she said, resting a hand lightly on the table. Let me push this a little further. Audience reaction. A few claps. A few quiet ohs. Sandra nodded. Go for it. Sunny glanced toward the audience for a second before turning back. You said fame shouldn't erase boundaries. I agree with that, she began. But public figures also shape conversations. They influence people. So when celebrities speak about hardship, don't they also carry responsibility for how that lands? Sandra listened without interrupting. The audience stayed unusually quiet. That's fair, Sandra answered after a pause. Words matter. Sunny nodded quickly. Exactly. But responsibility goes both ways. That got an immediate reaction. Audience applause. Sunny lifted an eyebrow. How so? Sandra sat back slightly, thinking before speaking. I think public people should be thoughtful about what they say, she said. Especially if people are listening. A few nods from the audience. But I also think audiences deserve honesty. Sunny tilted her head. Meaning? Sandra exhaled softly. I mean, if someone is struggling, pretending everything is perfect helps nobody. The audience murmured again. One thing I've learned, Sandra continued, is that people can tell when someone's performing perfection. Audience applause. One host jumped in. Oh, absolutely. Right, Sandra said, laughing lightly. We all know when somebody's giving a polished answer because they're terrified of upsetting people. Laughter spread across the room. Sunny smiled. So this isn't polished? Sandra laughed immediately. Oh, this is absolutely polished. Big audience laughter. But it's honest too, Sandra added. Sunny crossed her arms loosely, thoughtful. Can I challenge something? Sandra nodded again. Please. Sunny's tone stayed calm, conversational. You keep talking about honesty. But sometimes celebrities open up and then get upset when people react. The audience murmured. Sandra nodded slowly. That happens. So where's the line? Sunny asked. If someone shares publicly, doesn't public opinion come with that? Sandra paused. It does. The room quieted again. But criticism and entitlement aren't the same thing. The audience reacted immediately. A louder clap this time. Sunny leaned forward. What do you mean by entitlement? Sandra glanced briefly around the table. I mean this idea that because someone is visible, we deserve unlimited access to their emotions, their family, their mistakes, their private moments. Audience applause built again. Sunny nodded carefully. But some people would say celebrities benefit financially from attention. They do, Sandra replied instantly. No hesitation. They absolutely do. The quick agreement caught a few laughs from the crowd. Sandra smiled. This isn't me pretending Hollywood runs on kindness and friendship. Laughter. It runs on visibility, she continued. But there's still a difference between public work and private humanity. A brief silence followed. Sunny tapped lightly on the table. See, this is where people push back, she said. Because there's a feeling sometimes that celebrities want attention when it helps and privacy when it doesn't. Audience reaction. A few scattered claps. Sandra nodded. That criticism is fair sometimes. The audience quieted. But I think we oversimplify people. Sunny looked curious. How? Sandra leaned slightly forward. Because we love categories. Audience silence. She's rich, so she can't struggle. He's famous, so criticism shouldn't hurt. She chose public life, so privacy doesn't matter. Audience applause started growing. We turn people into ideas instead of people. The audience clapped harder. One host leaned back dramatically. Oh, laughter. Sunny smiled, but she wasn't fully backing down. Okay, she said carefully. But regular people also don't always get sympathy. Sandra nodded immediately. You're right. The quick agreement surprised the room. Sunny blinked. Oh, audience laughter. Sandra smiled. No, seriously. You're right. She turned slightly toward the audience. There are people carrying unbelievable pressure every day without applause, without money, without resources. The room softened. You know what scares me? Sandra asked quietly. The audience grew still. How disconnected people are becoming from each other. The tone shifted again. Less debate. More reflection. We're exhausted, Sandra continued. Everybody. She gestured lightly. People are angry online. Angry in stores. Angry driving. Audience laughter broke the tension for a second. You ever accidentally make eye contact in traffic? Sandra joked. Suddenly somebody acts like you ruined their entire year. Huge laughter. Even Sunny laughed harder this time. But Sandra's expression settled again. I think people are hurting, she said quietly. And when people hurt long enough, empathy gets harder. The room stayed quiet. Sunny looked thoughtful. So are you saying criticism comes from pain? Sometimes, Sandra said. Not always. She paused. Sometimes criticism is deserved. Audience reaction. A few surprised claps. Sunny smiled. Okay, that's honest. But sometimes, Sandra added, her voice calm, people project frustration onto whoever's visible. The audience murmured. And celebrities are visible. Sunny nodded slowly. That's probably true. For the first time, the conversation seemed to settle. Not agreement exactly, but understanding. Then one host laughed lightly. Can I just say something? Audience laughter. This feels like therapy suddenly. Big laugh. Sandra laughed too. Please bill somebody else. More laughter. But Sunny turned back toward Sandra again, smiling, though there was still curiosity there. All right, she said. I've got one question then. The audience reacted instantly. You could feel it. Another turn coming. Sandra smiled. Oh no. Audience laughter. Sunny leaned forward just slightly. You've handled pressure, criticism, fame. But what happens when somebody says maybe celebrities are too sensitive? The audience immediately reacted. A mix of laughter, gasps, and quiet murmurs. Sandra blinked once, then smiled. Oh, she leaned back in her chair. You really woke up and chose trouble today. The room exploded into laughter. The audience laughter rolled through the studio, louder than before, the kind that comes when everyone senses the conversation is balancing somewhere between playful and serious. Sunny laughed too, lifting her hand slightly. No, she said, smiling. I'm asking respectfully. Respectfully dangerous, Sandra replied immediately. The audience burst into laughter again. One host leaned over the table. She's not wrong. More laughter followed, easing the tension for a moment. Sunny shook her head, still smiling. All right, she said. Let me phrase it better. Sandra crossed her arms lightly, playful but attentive. I'm listening. Sunny leaned forward. There's this idea, she began carefully, that public figures sometimes react strongly to criticism in ways regular people don't have the luxury to. The room quieted again. People at home hear celebrities say things like, "This comment hurt me," or "Social media affected me." And some viewers think, "Well, welcome to life." Audience murmurs. Sandra nodded slowly. "Okay," Sunny continued. "So my question is, are celebrities becoming too sensitive?" A small wave of nervous laughter passed through the audience. Sandra paused long enough that the room seemed to lean with her. Then she smiled. "No." The audience reacted instantly. Some applause. Some laughter. Sunny raised an eyebrow. "That was quick." Sandra smiled wider. "You asked a hard question, not a complicated one." Audience reaction. "Oh." A host quietly laughed into her hand. Sunny leaned back slightly. "All right. Explain." Sandra rested her hands together. "I don't think people are too sensitive," she said carefully. "I think people are overloaded." The room quieted. Audience attention shifted immediately. That includes famous people, non-famous people, everybody. She gestured lightly toward the audience. You wake up and before breakfast somebody online thinks you're terrible. Audience laughter. You drive somewhere and someone's yelling at somebody. More laughter. You turn on the news and suddenly the world feels like it's ending before coffee. The audience laughed again, though quieter this time. Sunny nodded slowly. "So sensitivity isn't the issue?" Sandra shook her head. "No. Capacity." Audience murmurs. One host repeated softly. "Capacity." Sandra continued. "I think people hit limits." The room stayed quiet. And when people hit limits, little things start feeling bigger. Sunny looked thoughtful but unconvinced. "But criticism exists everywhere," she replied. "Teachers get criticized. Parents get criticized. Workers get criticized." "You're right," Sandra answered immediately. Again, no defensiveness. "And I think people deserve more compassion too." Sunny tilted her head. "But celebrities talk about online comments like they're trauma sometimes." Audience reaction. The tension returned. Subtle. Not explosive. Just sharper. Sandra didn't rush. She took a second. "I think words matter," she said calmly. Sunny waited. Sandra looked toward the audience briefly. "You don't get to see most people's worst days publicly." The room quieted. "If somebody at home messes up, maybe 10 people see it." She paused. "If somebody famous messes up." A host jumped in quietly. "Millions." Sandra nodded. "Millions." The audience stayed silent. "And I'm not saying poor celebrities," Sandra added quickly, smiling slightly. Audience laughter broke tension again. "Trust me, I understand how ridiculous that sounds." More laughter. "But scale matters." Sunny folded her hands. "So you think public criticism becomes dehumanizing?" Sandra nodded once. "Sometimes." Then she surprised everyone. "But sometimes celebrities deserve the criticism." Audience reaction. A louder murmur. Sunny blinked. "Interesting." Sandra laughed softly. "No, seriously." She leaned slightly forward. "Some people are arrogant." Audience laughter. "Some people are disconnected." More laughter. "Some people say ridiculous things." The audience clapped harder. One host laughed. "We all know a few." Huge laughter. Sandra grinned. "I'm trying to stay employed." The room erupted again. Even Sunny laughed harder than before. But then Sunny shifted. "Okay," she said, smiling less now, more curious. "Can I be honest?" Sandra nodded. "Please." Sunny took a breath. "I think some people watching might hear this conversation and think this still sounds like rich people problems." Audience murmurs. The room tightened again. Sandra didn't answer immediately. She nodded once. "Fair." The audience reacted softly. Sunny looked surprised at how quickly she agreed. Sandra continued. "It probably does sound that way to some people." She leaned back for a moment. "And maybe sometimes it is." That got an unexpected reaction. The audience grew quieter. "But pain doesn't become fake because somebody else has different problems." The audience applauded. Not explosive. Steady. Real. Sunny watched carefully. Sandra continued calmly. "A single parent working 2 jobs? That pressure is real." Audience applause. "Someone struggling financially? Real." More applause. "Someone grieving privately while smiling in public? Also real." The room softened. "And honestly," Sandra added, "I think we lose something when we start competing over whose pain counts." The audience applauded louder now. One host pointed toward Sandra. Okay, that was good. Audience laughter followed. Sunny smiled a little. See, this is annoying. The audience laughed. Sandra blinked. What? Sunny laughed, shaking her head. Because I disagree with parts of what you're saying. She paused. But then you say something and I'm like, all right, that's fair. Big audience laughter. Sandra laughed too. That's my strategy. One host interrupted immediately. Wait, Sandra has a strategy? Huge laughter. Sandra looked mock offended. Excuse me, I've survived decades of interviews. The audience clapped and laughed again. But Sunny looked back at her, expression thoughtful now. You know what I keep thinking? Sandra tilted her head. What? Sunny hesitated briefly. I wonder if audiences are actually angry at celebrities. The room quieted. Or angry at what celebrities represent. Silence. Even the audience seemed caught off guard. Sandra's expression changed. More serious. Less playful. She looked at Sunny for a second before answering. And when she finally spoke, her tone was quieter. That, she said slowly, is actually a really important question. The audience went completely still. The audience stayed unusually quiet for a moment after Sandra said it. That, she repeated softly, is actually a really important question. Sunny leaned back slightly. You think so? Sandra nodded. Yeah. The room felt different now. Less debate. More reflection. Because suddenly the conversation wasn't just about celebrities anymore. It was about frustration, pressure, expectations. Sandra folded her hands loosely on the table. I think sometimes public figures become symbols, she said carefully. Not intentionally. It just happens. Sunny listened without interrupting. You stop being a person to some people, Sandra continued. You become what they think you represent. Audience silence. Wealth. She counted lightly on her fingers. Opportunity. Privilege. Success. Access. The audience stayed locked in. And when people feel disconnected from those things. She paused. Anger finds somewhere to go. The room remained quiet. Sunny nodded slowly. So you think people aren't always reacting to celebrities themselves? Sometimes they are, Sandra said with a small laugh. Audience laughter. Sometimes celebrities absolutely earn it. More laughter followed. But sometimes, she continued, people are reacting to disappointment. The audience softened again. Disappointment in life, Sandra added quietly. In systems. In pressure. In feeling unseen. Sunny's expression shifted. Less debate now. More understanding. One host jumped in softly. You know what's interesting? The audience looked toward her. We started talking about Hollywood, and somehow ended up talking about everybody. Audience applause. Sandra smiled. Because everybody's tired. Big audience reaction. Sunny laughed quietly. That part. Audience laughter. That part is true, Sandra replied. The tension that had built across the conversation seemed to ease. Not disappear, but settle. Sunny crossed her arms lightly, smiling. Okay, she said. I'll admit something. Audience reaction. Oh, I came into this thinking we'd probably disagree more. Sandra laughed. Oh, there's still time. Huge laughter broke out. Even Sunny laughed harder. No, Sunny replied, pointing playfully. See, this is why audiences like you. Sandra laughed. Low expectations? The room exploded again. One host wiped tears from laughing. Please stop. But Sunny looked back toward Sandra one last time. Seriously though, she said. I respect that you didn't get defensive. Sandra shrugged lightly. I understood the question. Then she added quietly. And honestly, people deserve to ask hard questions. The audience applauded. Not loud at first. Steady. Warm. Sunny nodded. That's fair. One host smiled. Can we all agree this got way deeper than daytime TV usually gets? Audience laughter and applause filled the room. Sandra smiled. I blame coffee. More laughter. The segment began winding down, but the energy stayed with the audience. People were still reacting. Still nodding. Still whispering to each other between applause. As the show moved toward commercial break, Sunny leaned over briefly. You really came prepared. Sandra laughed. No. She smiled. I just answered honestly. The audience applauded one last time as the cameras pulled wider across the table. And by the time the episode ended, the conversation had already started spreading beyond the studio. Clips from the exchange quickly circulated online. Some viewers praised Sandra for staying calm under pressure and giving thoughtful answers. Others sided with Sunny, arguing the questions reflected frustrations many ordinary people feel. Many comments focused on one specific moment. Why do we treat visibility like consent? That line sparked debate across social media. Some people called it thoughtful. Others disagreed completely. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. The conversation felt real. Not rehearsed. Not polished into safe daytime television. Just a tense, honest exchange that slowly turned into something bigger. Audience members who attended the taping later described the room as unusually quiet during key moments, saying you could feel people thinking while the discussion unfolded. Some clips gained attention because viewers noticed something unusual for live television. Nobody shouted. Nobody stormed off. Nobody tried to win. Instead, it looked like two people disagreeing while actually listening. And after the show, brief backstage reactions reportedly described the mood as surprisingly relaxed, with hosts joking about how serious things unexpectedly became during what was supposed to be a lighter celebrity interview. For viewers, though, the bigger question lingered. Were people really angry at celebrities? Or angry at what success, privilege, and visibility represent? And now we want to hear from you. Who made the stronger point in this conversation? Did Sandra handle the tough questions well? Or do you think Sunny raised concerns people needed to hear? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.